In today's lesson, we will continue to factor trinomials. However, all of our trinomials in today's lesson will have a leading coefficient. The lesson before, that leading coefficient was always just 1. So now we're going to have numbers that are greater than 1, which makes things a little bit more complicated. So today's lesson is on factoring, which is basically the opposite of FOIL. So let's real quick review FOIL. 2n times 3n is 6n squared. You multiply the outside terms, 2n times 1 is 2n. Multiply the inside terms, 7 times 3n is 21n. And 7 times 1 is 7. Combine the like terms, so the answer is 6n squared plus 23n plus 7. So now let's think about working backwards, starting with a trinomial and trying to figure out two binomials that when multiplied together give you this trinomial. So for this example, we're just going to kind of do a guess and check so you get the idea, but then later I'm going to teach you a very specific step-by-step process that will always get you the correct answer. So we know that we need two binomials that would multiply together give you 2y squared plus 5y plus 2. So think about how you would have, let's see, the first two terms is what would you multiply by to get 2y squared? And let's see, we could have 2y and y. So you multiply those two together to get this first term in your trinomial. Now I want you to think about this 2. What do you have to multiply to get to 2? 2 times 1. So let's just guess and check. Let's place the 2 in the first binomial and the 1 in the second binomial. And then let's check to see if when we multiply our outside terms and our inside terms, if we get 5. So in this case, 2y times 1 is 2y, and then 2 times y is 2y, and 2y plus 2y is not 5y. So that means, let's try the other combination. What happens when we place 1 here and a 2 here? So now 2y times 2 is 4y, plus 1y is 5y. So just by guess and check, you can figure these out. But now I'm going to teach you the step-by-step process that will allow you to get the answer every time. Alright, so here are the steps to factoring trinomials. This first step, check for a greatest common factor. We're actually not going to worry about that for today's lesson, but do know that once we learn all the ways of factoring, this is truly always your first step, is you always have to first look, is there a greatest common factor? But I'm going to tell you right now, in today's lesson, you will not have any greatest common factors. So we have to multiply a times c together, so let's remember ax squared plus bx plus c. And then we have to find factors of a times c that add up to b. Substitute those in for b, group it, factor it, and love it. So I will try to make sense of those steps in a minute. Alright, so here's our first trinomial, 2n squared plus 15n plus 7. The first step says to multiply a times c. So 2 times 7 is 14. And we want to find factors of 14 that add up to 15. So we've got 1 times 14 and 2 times 7. Well, 1 and 14 is the factor that adds up to 15. So now I'm going to rewrite this trinomial, but I'm going to break apart this middle term, 15n, into my two factors. So plus 14n plus 1n plus 7. So I broke the factors up, And if you can see, all I did was rewrite this, except breaking apart the 15 into 14 and 1. And it does not matter which order you write those in. So multiply A times C, then we find the factors, and then we substitute the factors in for the middle term. And now this step says to group it and factor it. So group it means we're going to group the first two terms together and the second two terms together. So now, if we look at this binomial as two separate binomials, we're going to factor each binomial by finding the greatest common factor. So 2 and 14 have a common factor of 2, and then both of these have the variable n. So if I divide 2n out of each term, 2n squared divided by 2n is n, and 14n divided by 2n is 7. So now, 1n plus 7, we need to factor out whatever they have in common. And in this case, the only thing they have in common is 1, but that's okay, we're going to factor out a 1, which will leave you with, if you divide both terms by 1, n plus 7. So now, at this step, there's a way that you can check if you're doing it right, is these two, whatever's left in parentheses, should be the exact same. Because now, whatever you have in common, it's like we're going to factor that entire binomial out in front, n plus 7, which leaves you with 2n plus 1. 2n plus 1. So these two binomials, that is your answer. And you can double check. If we now refoil this, you can always check your answer, so that's nice. Let's see, this would be 2n squared plus n plus 14n plus 7, 2n squared plus 15n plus 7, which is what we started with. So there's always a way to check your answer after you factor it. Alright, moving on to example 2, 7x squared minus 20x minus 3. Alright, let's follow the same steps. Step number 1, multiply A times C. So 7, and we're just dealing with the coefficients, 7 times a negative 3 is a negative 21. Now I need the factors of negative 21 that add up to negative 20. So let's list them off to the right. Negative 1 times 21, negative 3 times 7, or 1 times negative 21, or 3 times negative 7. So which one of these sets adds up to negative 20? It would be the negative 21 and 1. So now I'm going to rewrite the original trinomial, except I'm going to break apart my middle term and replace it with the factors. And it does not matter which order you write the factors in. So let's rewrite this. 7x squared plus 1x minus 21x minus 3. So I've taken the 21 and broken it up into the factors. So now, let's see, multiply A times C, find the factors, substitute the factors in, and now group. Group it and then factor it. So, looking at the first binomial, we need to factor by the greatest common factor. So what do these two terms have in common? Let's see, coefficients, they have 1 in common, and variables, they have x. So I'm going to take out x, and then divide each of those terms by x. 7x squared divided by x is 7x, and 1x divided by x is 1. Alright, so now the second binomial, we need to factor greatest common factors. If they are both negative, then or at least if this number is negative, then you need to make sure to factor out a negative. And these two terms both have, let's see, a common factor of negative 3. So if you divide both of those terms by negative 3, negative 21x divided by negative 3 is a positive 7x, and negative 3 divided by negative 3 is a positive 1. So remember, this step is where you always check, am I on the right track? And we are, because these two binomials are the same. And that means, these two terms have the binomial 7x plus 1 in common. So I'm going to take that out, and that means you are left with x minus 3 as your other binomial. So these two binomials, 7x plus 1 times x minus 3, if you were to FOIL that, it should get you back to the beginning with that trinomial. Alright, let's do one more example together, and then maybe you can try one on your own. So 20p squared minus 31p minus 9. So, step by step. Step 1 is to multiply a times c. 20 times negative 9 is negative 180. So this can be a little challenging because it's a larger number that we're going to have to factor out. Let's write all the factors of negative 180 off to the side. So, you do not have to write all of these down. Here are all the factors of a negative 180. It has a lot of them, but I just wanted to show you that sometimes you'll get large numbers that you just have to you have to think through and persevere through looking at all the factors and trying to figure out which one will work. And the more that you do this, the better you will get at it, and you'll be able to keep those factors just in your head and try to find the one that works. Just kind of using guess and check. So in this long list, which set of factors, when you add them together, gives you a negative 31? And it is this one right here, a negative 36 times 5. So I'm going to rewrite this top trinomial, but with my factors, I need to substitute those in for the middle term. 20p squared, and now substitute plus 5p, and then minus 36p minus 9. Alright, so now I need to group it. Group the first two terms and the second two terms together. So now I need to factor by GCF, each binomial. 20p squared plus 5p, what do they have in common? Greatest common factor is 5p. And now divide each term by 5p. So 20p squared divided by 5p is 4p. And then 5p divided by 5p is 1. Alright, and then the second binomial, they have a GCF of, let's see, a negative 9. And now divide both terms by negative 9. Negative 36p divided by negative 9 is 4p, and negative 9 divided by negative 9 is plus 1. And we're on the right track because this binomial repeats itself. So those two terms have the binomial 4p plus 1 in common. And if you take that out in front, you're left with 5p minus 9. So here we have factored that trinomial. Alright, here is the last example, 4x squared plus 16x plus 7. And I want you to, even if you like guess and check, I want you to try this new method. I call it the AC method because the first step is A times C. So even if you think you like the guess and check method, I want you to try this one using the full steps of the AC method. So far you should have multiplied 4 times 7 to get 28. Factors of 28, 2 times 14 is 16. Substitute your factors in, and now group it. And then factoring each set of binomials, you should get a common factor of 2x plus 1, which leaves you with 2x plus 7. So there is your full lesson on factoring trinomials in which you have a leading coefficient. So on the assignment, I want you to maybe try some that are guess and check, some that are using the AC method, and figure out which method you are most comfortable with. Good luck!